Join Samantha and Hans at the next Macro to Micro Options Power Hour, held each Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Registration is free. Scan this QR code or click on the link in the description.
We had a question earlier. I wanted to ask you, Samantha. Somebody says, I'm confused about BXM.
What about it?
It hasn't been, it was TM.
Yeah, it's broken.
BXM's not been feeling it.
It is definitely busted. It has been a phenomenal, so BXM, the BuyWrite monthly index that I happen to show every day in my trading room, so it's one that I use, and it's supposed to mirror the S&P, but it really is not lately, and it has broken very much like SVXY broke during the, let me just show you what I mean by that.
Sure.
All right, I'm going to show you something that's ugly, but just trust me, okay? Because I'm answering his question because he is knowledgeable about this, and for others, it's going to be like, which craft are you using? But let me just show you. SVXY is the inverse of VIX, loosely defined. It's really not, but you know what it is. But my point is, it had been a great tell for direction of the market until we had VIX blow out to 65 that Monday morning on August 5th, and SVXY has not recovered. So it had been absolutely tracking SPX beautifully on this whole rotation until it broke. Okay, that's number one. So now you go to the next publicly, it's in your charting software, BXM, which is the CBOE BuyWrite monthly. And if you track it with SPX, you can see it has stayed beautifully in trend. By the way, it did not blow out back on August 5th. It got defended, that convexity short covering rally, and it got right back above in trend. What he's referring to is the same thing that happened with SVXY back in August of 2024 has now happened with BXM in February to April 2025. And yes, I'm completely aware of that. And that makes it very frustrating because you want to find a new indicator and you can't. There aren't so many that are readily available that mirror the SPY so well from an option standpoint. Anyway, long story short, I had expected this H pattern, which was one of the reasons that I was able to come up with my 48.78 price target for anybody who might remember down here, right? This was like the same H pattern into 48.78. So BXM is a great little tool, for lack of a better word, but it's done nothing but go sideways. And then yesterday, before I go to yesterday, on Friday, I had noticed that, oh my goodness, we're really losing BXM, which is typically, like I said, it's got a correlation with SPY, so it bears watching. But then I also said there's a caveat. This could be a snapback, a ricochet rabbit, where we're getting into a Bollinger Band squeeze, which is technical parlay for. This could be an elastic band, or it could open up and the Bollinger Band is going to expand, and this thing is going to go retest some of these lows. Because you know what happens when you have a Bollinger Band, for those who are into the technical side. I'm just going to show you. Look how tight this is getting. We're going to have a big move coming up soon. But this is broken. So the point is, yes, it is very frustrating. In the same way that SVXY died an ugly death for the yen carry trade, BXM died an ugly death for basically the Trump tariff terror. And now we're waiting for it to make a decision. If it gets back above the 200, it's very bullish. And if it doesn't, it's bearish or useless. One of the two.
Now, what you've got to remember, folks, is that it's a BuyWrite index, right? So it's basically, it sells at the money options. The BXY, which is sell out of the money options. So it tends to do better in a bull market. So the problem is these kinds of products, just like you may have experienced on your own, it's not the product's fault, but we had a very strong rally. I don't know, we were up in 1 month, but it was massive. So whenever you if your timing is wrong on the writing of the calls, you can end up really capping your performance. And so it's a little different. The SVXY is going to reflect a change in the structure of the VIX futures, right? So right now, if we stay calm, SVXY and SVIX have that tailwind behind them because we have that nice contango and we have that beautiful roll yield that is going to benefit those products. It hurts the VXX and the other ones. The BXM, what happens is, and I've experienced this because I ran many of these cover call funds, and you get this big sell-off, and then it comes time to roll your calls into the next month, and you're like, oh, damn, I don't want to roll these now because what if the market rallies back? And so it has no choice. It isn't an active strategy. It just does what it does. I can't remember what it probably goes to expiry. So if you were to look at the chart, I'll bet you the market probably had a good rally after a couple of expiries, after April expiry, and it's going to cap that upside. So it literally just gains the small amount of premium on the way down, and maybe it sold $5 of premium, and then on the way up, it gives up $30 of upside because it's capped its upside. So it's these strategies, it's like anybody who's done covered calls understands these are very path dependent. There's a little bit of luck involved. You don't want to, if you sell those calls, even though volatility is high. One example that I give when I teach people, I go, listen, I want to show you the JPM caller after COVID. Volatility was very high. So don't think that just because the VIX is relatively high that you're getting so much premium that you're cushioned for a good deal of the upside. It lost on something like 6 or 7 of the 8 quarters because the market had 7 or 8 quarters, very strong quarters. The market went up like 80% or something, if I remember correctly. And it gave up a lot of that performance. Even though it was selling calls at a VIX 20 something, the market move was too strong and it kept giving up. That's called benchmark risk, right? Like, how's my cover call doing versus if I just held the market? That's what you're seeing with BXM. You're seeing that the market far outperformed the capped performance on the BXM. So they can be tricky when you get a lot of volatility for sure. And people have this idea that volatility is high, the VIX is 25, 30, and I'll be fine. But it's hard to contain an exceptionally strong run, which is what we had there. It was a V. People were expecting a W or something, and we got a very strong run.
We had the policy intervention. So for me, that's always the biggest trigger. In other words, it trumps anything going on with options market. And we actually talked about that a few months ago when this kind of started. We're like, listen, this is macro driven headlines. So we're going to have to wait for a macro trigger that's bullish or bearish. And we got a bullish one of strength on that fateful April 9th. And the rest, as they say, is history. But which is so interesting to me is Besant promised they would not do policy intervention. Who cares what happens to the market? We can't follow the Yellen playbook. We can't keep saving. We can't keep spending money. We can't keep financing this with short duration T-bills. On and on. He talked about how we just have to let the chips fall and clean this mess up. And then what they do, intervene, get their buddies to intervene, more intervention. Like, it's been nonstop intervention since literally the bond market and credit market froze before going over the cliff. And they came in on April 9th. They brought it there. It wasn't over. China's de-escalating. No, US escalated, then they de-escalated. And that's why Trump is getting called the taco.
Join Samantha and Hans at the next Macro to Micro Options Power Hour, held each Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Registration is free. Scan this QR code or click on the link in the description. Watch the full Options Macro to Micro Power Hour episode by clicking on the video here and subscribe to LaDucTrading YouTube channel for more content.